Welcome to Chapter 8 of The Wizard of Oz. I've written this chapter in a condensed version, and there are some activities afterwards for students to do, which I will explain at the end of the chapter. The Deadly Poppy Field. Our little group of travelers woke up the next morning refreshed and full of hope. Dorothy ate like a princess, with peaches and plums for her breakfast from some nearby trees. The dark forest was now behind them, and what was in front of them seemed pleasant by comparison, open and sunny. They still had to get across the river, though, but the Tin Woodman was almost finished constructing his raft. As soon as he finished attaching all the logs together, Dorothy and Toto sat down, right in the middle of it, at the edge of the river. The lion stepped onto the raft next, but the raft tipped badly. Quickly, the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow stepped onto the opposite side to balance the raft perfectly, and using poles to row, the group started to cross the river. All was going well until they got to the middle of the river, where a swift current pulled the raft downstream and farther away from the yellow brick road. The water was deep, and their poles could not touch the bottom. Down the river they floated. "This is bad," said the Tin Woodman. "If we keep floating in this direction, we will enter the land of the Wicked Witch of the West, and she will make us her slaves." "Then I will not get a brain," said the Scarecrow. "And I will not get any courage," said the Lion. "And I will not get a heart," said the Tin Woodman. "And I will not be able to go home," said Dorothy. The Scarecrow was determined to get to the Emerald City, and he pushed his pole into the water so strongly that it stuck to the bottom of the riverbed. As he did so, he held on to the pole, and the raft floated away from him, so that he was stuck on the pole while his friends remained on the raft. "Goodbye!" the Scarecrow called to them. The Tin Woodman began to cry, but he remembered the rust and dried his eyes quickly. The Scarecrow was in a bad situation. "When I met Dorothy," he thought to himself, "I was stuck to a pole in a cornfield. But now I am stuck to a pole in the middle of a river." Down the river, the raft floated further and further away from the Scarecrow. The Lion said, "We must do something. I think I could swim to the shore. Maybe you could hold on to my tail, and the raft would be pulled after me to the shore." So the Lion hopped into the water, and the Tin Woodman grabbed his tail. The Lion began to swim with all his might. Meanwhile, Dorothy used the long pole to push the raft by sticking it into the muddy bottom of the river. The current was strong, and they had to work with all the strength they had, but they didn't give up. Finally, they reached the shore and were able to sit down in the grass and rest. They were so tired. They knew they were a long way from the yellow brick road, and when they were rested, they chose to walk along the riverbank until they came to the road again. Dorothy picked up her basket, and they all started to walk along the grassy bank. The country was so beautiful that the company may have been tempted to linger there for a while if it were not for the Scarecrow. They felt sorry for the Scarecrow and were determined to return quickly to find him. As they walked, Dorothy stopped to pick a flower. Soon afterward, the Tin Woodman suddenly cried, "Look!" They all looked at the river and saw the Scarecrow up on a pole in the middle of the water, looking quite sad and lonely. "What can we do to save him?" asked Dorothy. The Lion and the Tin Woodman shook their heads. They didn't know what to do. They all sat on the riverbank dejectedly. Just then a stork flew by, who, seeing the group, stopped to rest on the river's edge. "Who are you, and where are you going?" asked the stork. They all introduced themselves and told the stork they were going to the Emerald City. "This isn't the road," said the stork. "We know," Dorothy answered, "but we don't want to go without the Scarecrow." "Where is the Scarecrow?" asked the stork. "Over there in the river," replied Dorothy, and the stork twisted her long neck around so she could look. If he wasn't so big and heavy, I could get him for you, said the stork. But he is not heavy at all, said Dorothy eagerly, for he is stuffed with straw. If you could bring him back, we would be so grateful to you. Well, I will try, said the stork. But if he is too heavy, I shall have to drop him into the river again. So the big bird flew to the river and grabbed the Scarecrow with his great claws, flew high into the air carrying the Scarecrow, and deposited him on the bank with his friends. The Scarecrow was so happy to be reunited with the others that he hugged them all, even the lion and Toto. As they walked along, the Scarecrow sang songs of joy. He said to the stork if he ever got a brain, he would return to the stork and return a kindness to her. The stork said, I like to help. It was my pleasure. And then she flew away to return to her nest to be with her babies. The group walked along happily and soon found themselves in the middle of a great field of poppies. There were big yellow, white, and blue and purple flowers, plus great scarlet flowers everywhere. They were dazzlingly beautiful. The lion and Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman all declared how much they admired the flowers. Soon there were only scarlet poppies in the field. Everybody knows that so many poppies put out such a powerful odor that anybody who breathes it in falls asleep immediately. The problem is they sleep on and on and on and never wake up again. The flowers were very dangerous, but Dorothy didn't know it. She started to close her eyes and said to her friends she just wanted to lie down for a few minutes and have a short sleep. But the Tin Woodman would not let her do this. We must hurry and get back to the yellow brick road before it gets dark, he said. But Dorothy kept closing her eyes and lying down. The lion said, We can't stop here. If we leave Dorothy here, she will die. The smell of the flowers is killing us all. The dog is already asleep and I can hardly keep my eyes open. At that point, it became clear that the only ones who weren't affected by the poppies were the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman because they were not made of flesh. Run fast, said the Scarecrow to the lion. We will carry the girl and the dog out of this field. But if you fall asleep, we will not be able to carry you out. You are too heavy. The lion used all the energy he had left to run, and soon he was out of sight. The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman put their arms together to make a kind of chair with their arms to carry Dorothy. They put the dog in her lap and started to walk out of the field like that. The Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow walked on and on, carrying Dorothy and Toto. The poppy field was so vast. Finally, they came to a spot near the edge where the lion had succumbed to the fumes of the poppies and had fallen asleep quite close to the edge of the flower field. I'm sorry, said the Tin Woodman, but the lion is much too heavy. There is nothing we can do. We must walk on. So they walked on further until they came to the edge of the river, far enough away from the flowers, and there they rested and waited for Dorothy and Toto to wake up. End of chapter 8. Here are the activities that correspond with chapter 8 from The Wizard of Oz. The first one is reading comprehension. These questions are in order, and the student can just go back and read the different paragraphs or selections to find the answers. To make it much simpler, there are 12 questions. To make it much simpler, if you continue on the second page at the very top are all 12 answers, but not in the right order. I made an answer key to these first 12 questions too. So, for example, the first question states, what obstacle was in front of Dorothy, the Cowardly Lion, the Tin Woodman, and Toto? And then you can either go back up and look and see that at the very beginning, they see that they still have the river to cross. They still had to get across the river though, right? So they could say they had to cross the river. But if you go down here and you choose, here are some options, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, no. The answer to question number 1 is this one right here. They had to cross a big river with no bridge. So all of the answers will be found. So they're just showing their understanding of some of the reading. Then this doesn't really have anything to do with the chapter, but I made it. It's an animal word search. And the challenge will be to name each of these animals and then find it in the word search. So, for example, here's an ostrich, and I happen to see here's the word ostrich. The explanation is right here. So that's for fun. And now a drawing activity. As far as this goes, there was a stork that was featured in this chapter who rescued the Scarecrow. And in French, a stork, c'est une cigogne. And this YouTube link will take you to a fun little drawing tutorial to how to draw a stork. Students can draw a stork, and so that kind of goes to different levels, just following line by line. On the bottom here, fact, in Europe, storks build nests on top of houses. So there's just a little illustration of that, and it's a beautiful big bird. Down here, answer key, and that's it. I hope this was helpful.